Well, the end of September is very close, and here we are with our week 4 reflections on rugby. My name is Mark Ashcroft. This is at Senior Mash, talking rugby union. And a big ask of everybody that participates, please do subscribe, like, comment, give it a thumbs up. Really does help. It's called activation, I believe, and if we can activate more rugby, then hopefully we get to see more players on the pitch, more fans watching. So for the purposes of today, do take a look at talkingrugbyunion.co.uk, both on Facebook and YouTube, and of course Twitter and the website. Well, for me, this week was exciting because university rugby was getting back to normal with the Bucks Super League. And university rugby is a very important part of my rugby experience, dating back to 1980 at Bradford University. I wasn't what one would describe as a regular starter, but I was always available to lend a hand, propping in the first team. Vividly remember in 1982 versus York University, and got absolutely stuffed, but thoroughly enjoyed university rugby, and hoping that on one of our reflections I can talk to a very key individual in that, a guy called Jeff Fitzgerald. But what is good for me is it's not just the Wednesday afternoons of Bucks Super Rugby, it's also how many graduates are now playing in England's top flight, the Premiership. It really does show the importance of combining sport and education. And to those graduates making it in the top flight, look forward to watching your progression and certainly talking rugby union. Well, week 4. What I've been looking at this week, I say. Well, plenty to look at this week. The results. Well, interestingly, I start with Bucks Super Rugby, and particularly drawn to Bath University versus Durham University. A few years ago, I would have been saying Aaron James's team versus Alex Key's team, but Alex has moved on, and Bath University, a little bit like Bath Rugby, are going from strength to strength at the moment, and I think that was a very good home result for them this week just gone by, and I'll be sure to focus in future weeks on some of my memories of Bath University Rugby, but also some of the real highlights of being able to interact with Durham University, a fantastic university, and I've met some absolutely wonderful individuals as a result of my involvement with Rugby Sevens, and you'll see a few faces in a moment that go back. So well done, Bath University, Durham University. I also got drawn by a women's international, New Zealand versus Ireland, and what a win for Ireland, beating the world champions. Wow. Irish women's rugby has gone through the ringer, and to see this result was just so refreshing. In my day job as a CEO, we are an Irish-based company, and a few years ago we were asked to help sponsor Irish ladies rugby, and we did that, and we did it with great enthusiasm and great optimism for the future, and to see this result really reinforces what we were thinking 2018. So well done to all those involved. Tremendous result, probably the result of the weekend for me. Sat in my armchair watching Saracen Sale, I was absolutely drawn by Alex Lazowski. I thought, what a great game that guy had. I was so impressed with everything that he was able to do in that game. His kicking started immaculately. I know he dropped off a few. His defensive marshalling is very, very good. I personally thought he was the difference between the two teams. I do like the looks of Bambamba at Sale. I thought his contribution in the second row was something to really build on, and good luck to him for the rest of the season. And as ever, good to see Josh Beaumont on the field of play. Going from Sale Sharks to Sale FC, this was a very, very good win for Sale FC in National 1. Rotherham were on somewhat of a roll, and Harvey Bijon has been doing some pretty special things with that Rotherham team. So for Sale to get that win, particularly on the back of a very difficult weekend last weekend, the coach setting fire, late kickoff, Rams getting all over them. This was a good result. So well done, Sale FC. Be interesting to see how Rotherham bounce back from that. And as I said on my last discussion, I do have some favourites. I do have some soft spots, and one of those soft spots is Fylde. Fylde, when I was at Hutton Grammar School, was one of our go-to local clubs. I said that Brian Ashton went to Hutton Grammar School last week. That's not 100% correct. He was definitely the head of sport at Hutton Grammar School whilst I was there, and had a huge influence on me, more particularly with my cricket than my rugby. But another guy that was heavily involved at Hutton Grammar School was a guy called Robert Bob Kennedy, who was also a Fylde player. So very often we would go and watch Fylde games, but also if Lancashire were playing, very often it would be at Fylde, and the school would organise a minibus to take us over to watch at the Fylde club. Great ground to visit. They look to have a very new team this year. I've watched them with great interest over the last 10 years. A good friend of my son's, Ben Vernon, and somebody that my son has played rugby with since I think they started at under sixes at a tournament at Preston Grasshoppers, Josh Beaumont. So Fylde's got a big part of my rugby history. Was getting a little bit concerned about them. Some of the results weren't going their way, so nice to see them get a good victory at the weekend, and let's hope that kickstarts their season. So they were the eye-catching results this week. Probably won't be seen anywhere else on social media, won't be seen anywhere else on national media, but they're our eye-catching results. What I've been learning is that my British and Irons Lions predictor was truly unique, and people were somewhat surprised at the basis on which I'd selected my first squad. It's going to evolve month by month, and I'll show you a monthly comparison. But as I said at the time, this first squad was one built on people that I know, I like, I respect, I've had interaction with, and honestly, some fantastic rugby players in there. So let's see how it evolves, but you will get a different, an independent and a unique view from me. Well, national media was reporting that our big guns, Premiership rugby clubs, have got some pretty soft balance sheets. What do they mean? They probably mean that those balance sheets are insolvent, not necessarily trading insolvently, but are balance sheet insolvent. That normally is down to the huge level of debt that's been incurred. Be interesting to see what response, if any, we get from Premiership Rugby. The other point to make is there is so much content out there for rugby fans. You can see rugby from every which way at the moment. There's some good analysis, there's some good commentary, there's some good live streams. It's encouraging to see this level of content, and I hope that the authorities allow independence and allow people to use content to really amplify the game. It's so important that people want to go and watch, want to go and play. And as ever, my research into sports history in the late 1800s has been continuing. And rather than pursuing football and cricket this week, I got diverted into rugby that was being played in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Some very interesting things, and I'll share a few items with you towards the end. Well, from my uni rugby archives, there is the aforementioned Josh Beaumont. Had a wonderful spell up at Durham University, and you see him alongside Harrison Collins. Harrison, a real stalwart of Pride Passion Party Sevens and Red Panda Sevens. But isn't it great that guys can get onto the pitch at Twickenham and be rewarded with the Bucks champions? Great scenes and happy memories of watching those guys achieve the top prize in university rugby. Two other images here. I've got Bristol v Bath at university level. There's some encouraging noises coming out of Bristol University as they're trying to get back on track with their university rugby development, and I hope that does continue. And I wanted to show you one of the iconic Red Panda Sevens bags that we distributed amongst multiple university rugby players in 2010, 11 and 12. Social media this week, well, Nick Easter was having a slight go, I think, at Ampthill. Interesting time for the championship. The news that the RFU are going to have an open tender for 2 extra places. Interesting in itself. Suspicion is it's been geared to allow Wasps, Worcester, London Irish to, inverted commas, reapply. But honestly, what's going to happen if somebody like, let's pick a name, Sale FC, Sedgley Park, Richmond, Plymouth decided to make the application? How would that be received? Be interesting to follow. And do keep an eye on Nick Easter, because some of his comments about what's happening in Championship Rugby really are very thought-provoking. And just remember that for the likes of Exeter University, for the likes of Loughborough University, for Hartpury, they play Championship and National League Rugby alongside Bucks. That's a big commitment, Wednesdays and Saturdays, and always worth seeing how those teams are performing. Soft spot again, Johnny Matthews. Well, last week he got his 40th try, and couldn't believe the post I saw this weekend. Glasgow replacement. Johnny comes onto the field for Kyle Stein. Yes, we know you'll probably never see this substitution again. Absolutely brilliant. Johnny can definitely play on the wing. And to the commentator at the Bournemouth Sevens one year who said, "What's a hooker doing on the wing?" Well, 40 tries for Glasgow Warriors. Probably tells a story. I always like to showcase people that are making an impact on National League Rugby and University Rugby. And Simon Cruz is one of those, alongside Chris Heel, that really does understand what's going on beneath the surface of University Rugby. And some of his analysis of who's played at Buck Super Rugby and are now playing in the professional game is worth following on Twitter. Excellent analysis. Really, really excellent. Onto my timeline this week just came a photograph of a game played in Slovenia. Yep, this was Slovenia International. The reason I follow Slovenia is that a very good friend of mine, sadly no longer with us, John Skofic, his 5 sons were able to represent Slovenia in an international game, and this is the youngest of the sons, Frankie, sliding in for a fantastic try. Just great to see on my timeline. So special. And interesting to see Heineken Kinsale Sevens open for business for 2025. If you've never been, go to the Kinsale Sevens. It's one of the things you should do in your rugby life. And just echoing what I said earlier about Fylde putting up a more tenacious performance, and great to see Chris Farrow, as always, on the money with the photography. Well, I've been looking at sport in Lancashire in the late 1800s, and this week I was focused on 1893 to 1906 in the Southport Visitor and the Ormskirk Advertiser, where I came across rugby. And what I found very interesting is that in 1899, the rugby balls were the same price as footballs. Well, at least they were in Liverpool. I also found it interesting that across the country, newspapers tended to report on accidents and deaths in rugby in the late 1800s. And it was always part of the normal reporting. It wasn't a part of specific football or rugby or cricket or tennis or hockey. It was very much part of the news. And then, as we got to 1904 and 1906, we start to see rugby being reported. It appears in a very similar way that we see rugby reported in the news today. And here's 2 games, Liverpool versus Waterloo and Waterloo versus Birkenhead Park. Very good to see those, and what I'll continue to do is look at history of football, cricket and rugby. And where I find interesting learnings, I'll let you see them. This isn't your normal rugby review show. This is very much a reflections, memories, and my interpretations. There'll be plenty of archive footage, but do share, like, subscribe, comment, and above all, enjoy this different angle on the great game of rugby. And as ever, thanks to @TalkRugbyUnion and @NatLeagueRugby on Twitter, and those 2 websites I mentioned earlier, talkingrugbyunion.co.uk and ncarugby.com. Have a great week, and I'll be back next week.